Hello, and welcome to Conversations with Charlie. I am recording my podcast on Anchor. It is the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. It has creation tools that allow you to edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. You can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can even make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started and listen up to my podcast. I hope you enjoy. Bye-bye. Hello, and welcome to Conversations with Charlie. I am joined with Danyell Williams to discuss the topic of situational and functional depression. Danyell Williams has over 24 years in social service sector. She had spent the last 14 years lecturing, public speaking, and conducting research on the complex issues of pregnant and parenting women. Her passion and purpose are advocating for and uplifting women who face significant challenges in their lives and the lives of their children. She has a bachelor's and master's degrees in criminal justice from Penn State and St. Joseph's University, and a second master's in health policy from University of Sciences in Philadelphia. Danyell is also wrapping up her first year of a doctorate program in social work at University of Southern California, USC. We're going to get right to it, and welcome, Danyell.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on this platform. I'm very excited about today's topic.
I am very excited as well. So let's get right to it. Situational and functional depression.
So one of the reasons why I wanted to discuss situational and functional depression is it's actually more common than we believe. Normally we think when you hear the term depression, you think of someone that's held up in their home, isolated, not being able to go about their daily routine. That is, of course, a part of depression, but situational and functional depression happens a lot more often, I find, in my 24 years of experience as a clinician among women, probably because of the roles that we have to play throughout our daily routines, being mother and sometimes father, the backbone of the family, also work and education. All those things can lead to situational and functional depression, and you don't even know that it's going on.
Wow. So let me ask you this. How is situational and functional depression different than clinical depression?
Okay, so let's start with situational depression. So normally, situational depression is short-term, and it's induced by a stress-related event. It can be a traumatic event, and trauma is different for everybody.
Right.
Something that could be traumatic to you, I could be fine with. So there is no set standard for what determines what trauma is. It's really based on that person's reaction to the situation.
So let me ask you a question about trauma. Right? I mean, because we have big words, big topics here. So trauma. So personally, I'm just going to ask you because I'm thinking perhaps I've had some situational depression. Could it be that maybe if your kid goes away to college, and I don't want to trivialize anyone's trauma because some people may think, oh, that's nothing. But could something like that be traumatic for a parent?
Yes. Depending on, again, it's stress and trauma, right? That can cause situational depression. So, shifting a situation in your life where your child now goes off to college.
Yeah.
For some parents, that can be a tremendous loss, right?
Right.
So in that loss, of course, stress and even trauma can be caused by that sense of profound loss by a parent.
Wow.
And again, trauma is, as they say, in the eye of the beholder, right?
Sure.
For some parents, they're like, "Let me help you pack." And that's the tricky thing about trauma. Because we used to talk about trauma as far as post-traumatic distress and, people that were coming from war, soldiers that were coming from war.
Sure.
And then as time and really trauma-informed care became a thing and grew in the clinical world, we started to realize that trauma can cover many, many different things.
Sure.
But it's so situational is a little different because it's often short term.
Gotcha.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's caused by a series of events or maybe one traumatic event. The problem with situational depression is, you don't get a text message from your depression and say, hey, this experience has caused you situational depression. You're just in it and not even realizing that you're in it.
Yeah. It's insidious in a way.
Exactly. And unfortunately, if that depression due to a certain situation is not addressed, and these kind of events continue to keep happening, where you're maybe continuously exposed to trauma, or you're continually exposed to stressful situations, which is like, hello, most people can say that at one period of a time in their lives, then that can move you into what we call functional depression.
Okay.
Where you are now going about your day, but you're just functioning under depressive state.
Wow. So what does that functioning look like? How does that play out?
Okay, so you have your symptoms of functional depression that can mimic just regular depression. Overeating or not eating enough. Sleeping is a big one, right?
Right.
Insomnia. Not ever feeling quite happy.
Yeah.
Or content. I read an article where it says functional depression is faking it. You have a smile on your face, you're going throughout your day, you're taking care of your business, but under that layer, you're really unhappy.
Wow.
I wanted to tell this story when I was thinking about functional depression that a friend had told me. Basically, she was working at this job where the commute was very long. She said it was about an hour and a half to and from. So she was doing about 3 hours of commuting a day.
Right.
Spending a lot of money on, just the upkeep of her car and traveling and all that stuff. So she started getting really down and she was having a lot of problems. And she's a clinician as well. And one day she's actually talking to a client, because what people don't know is, as clinicians, we talk to our clients, and sometimes they enlighten us.
Exactly.
Not even sometimes, a lot of times they enlighten us. So she was telling the story about this nightmare commute that she was experiencing 5 days a week to one of her clients. And he said, oh, well, you're just breaking even. And technically she was breaking even, right? But she wasn't just breaking even financially, but she was also breaking even emotionally.
Wow.
Right? And so I think that is the perfect story to describe what functional depression is.
Wow.
You're just breaking even emotionally.
Breaking even emotionally. That adds a lot of insight and a different perspective. Breaking even emotionally.
And,
Wow.
unfortunately, we do it all the time.
Right.
We do it all the time. And for me personally, when I started really thinking about the changes that I needed to make in my life on an emotional level, and how functional depression played a huge role in my life, even as a clinician, I had to think about, wow, when was the last time I could say that I was truly happy?
Wow.
emotionally just truly happy, not giddy, rainbows and teddy bears, but just had like a profound happiness within me. And I couldn't remember the last time I felt that way. And I realized that I had been breaking even for years.
Wow. Breaking even for years. I mean, and I get it. I understand, in using those terms, I mean, it rings home. How often are we breaking, even? Working jobs and coming home, and you're kind of robotic. You get up, you take the train, you go to work, you come home, you cook dinner, you go to bed, you do it again and again and again. You could very well be functionally depressed. I think I used the word earlier, it's insidious. And until something happens, so my question would be, how do you catch this? How do you know that you're in a situational depressive state or a functional depressive state? And how do you get out of that? What happens? Like, what is it that triggers you to say, I need to do something different?
Right. So that's a complex answer, right? To something that seems simple but can be very complex as well.
Yeah.
The first thing is developing a good degree of insight, right?
Insight of self or?
Of self.
Okay.
Exactly. Insight of self. Understanding who you are, and when those warning signs that something is not right is occurring.
And could those warning signs be physical?
Yes, definitely. So if you find yourself, where you're kind of doing the autopilot every day, right? And that you're really not taking any time for self, practicing self-care. You're just kind of going through the motions. That can definitely be a warning sign. Or if you are suffering from headaches, or you're suffering from insomnia, I can't tell you how many Facebook friends I see shooting emails on a daily basis about their insomnia. And it could be emotional, right?
Right.
It could be caused by situational depression or functioning depression.
Yeah.
But you've gotten so used to it that you're just like, another night where I can't get I can't get any sleep.
Sure.
Also, I think a good first step is just to ask yourself, like I asked myself, am I happy? And being able to be honest with yourself about if you are happy or not. Or when was the last time you had been? If you say no, I'm not, then the second question is, well, when is the last time I have been happy? And what does happiness look like to me?
That's right.
And so that can, really get you started of doing some self-awareness of where you're at as far as emotionally.
Yeah.
Another sign can be, are you kind of always a negative Nancy, right? You're like, no, that glass is half empty. You're always waiting for, something bad to happen, or you just really can't embrace the good that is happening in your life.
Yeah.
Because it's being funneled, it's being sifted through the lenses of depression.
Right. That's right.
Those can also be signs that, something's just not right. Something's just not right with me.
Yeah. And I think, in that self-awareness, right? Asking the question, am I happy? Asking, one of the things as a coach, we're trained to ask provocative questions of others. But you have to ask yourself the same kind of provocative questions. Not just are you happy, but then what would you be happy doing? What is it that you really want to do or do differently? So so the situational and functional depression, right? Something happens traumatic in your life. No matter how small, how big, it's your trauma that has shifted how you are feeling, right? And then if you're functioning in it because you are just breaking even in the situation, it is, how do I get myself out of it? And so it is about asking yourself those tough questions. Are you just going through the motions? And what is it going to take for you to be happy?
I have the same. I've been saying it for years. In fact, my clients, when I would say it to my clients, they would be like, "Oh, there she go again," because I don't know how I came up with this saying, but I need to patent it because I think it's a great saying and it ties into our discussion. So the saying is, you live the narrative that you tell yourself.
Absolutely.
So if you keep telling yourself, this is how it is. It's about breaking even. That's how I'm going to live my life. And I don't need to be happy. I'm functioning just okay. Yes, I may be sad and, a little negative, but it is what it is. This is just how my life is going to be. That is just how your life is going to be, right? It's not going to magically morph into something different.
Yeah.
Because that is the narrative that you're telling yourself. So you ask me, what can you do to step out of this situational depression and or functional depression? And that is changing the narrative. And you're going to start with just something small, like, I'm going to be more positive, right?
Right.
I'm going to be more, and I'm going to try, but I am going to be.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because try is like, I'll try tomorrow. So you're going to say, I'm going to be more positive.
Right.
I'm going to start looking at things a little bit more positively, in a positive manner. Or doing some positive affirmations. Or just recognizing, being appreciative and grateful for the good things that are happening in your life.
Absolutely. Well, let me ask you this. So sometimes not everyone is as self-aware as others. And sometimes you could be functioning in such a state for so long that you don't even realize that you're depressed. Perhaps the people outside looking in, our friends, our family, our coworkers, what if you see this in someone? How do you approach them?
That's a good question, because sometimes it does take others to point it out to us, because if we're knee deep in it, or we've been functioning this way for so long, it's really, hard to see, the trees through the forest, or however that saying goes.
Yeah.
So, depending, one, you have to gauge what kind of relationship you have with that person. Right?
Absolutely. Gauge the relationships. Yeah.
Gauge the relationship first. So that, because this conversation ain't for everybody.
That's right.
There's different degrees of relationships that you may have with someone.
Absolutely.
So if you do feel like, no, this is a good friend of mine, and I'm worried because I noticed this, then invite them into having a a and it should always start off with an invite, not you just going in.
Yeah. So what does that invite look like? Hey girl, we need to talk. You ain't the same. I mean,
right. You don't even give them a chance to say anything, right? And you can always start by talking about yourself.
Oh, yeah.
Like, hey, girl, hey girl, shoot, I saw this article
That's
on
right.
functional depression, and it really got me to thinking. Or I listened to this podcast today, and it really got me to thinking about, what situational or functional depression has looked like in my own life. And I realized, whoa, maybe I have experienced this.
Yeah.
So, what do you think? Do you think that you know, and then that's how you can open the conversation
Sure.
Because, you know, honestly speaking, I think we all can say that at one point in our lives, we have experienced both
I agree.
situational and functional depression.
I so agree with you.
And so that's how you can bring someone in by also sharing your own experiences with it.
Yeah, I so agree with you. It is probably the best method, and especially when it's true and authentic, and because then it allows them to really look at themselves and acknowledge for themselves without feeling attacked or judged. I mean, and the word depression, you know,
it's scary.
It's scary. It's scary because people think of what? Medication, you need to see a doctor. Not saying that may not be the case for some, but, you know, it's a tough conversation to have, right? It's a real tough conversation, and that's a big word, depression. You know, it's like the big D. You don't want to use it.
Or people say, well, I don't feel like hurting myself, because that's what you see on TV, right? When you see depression,
right?
You think it's that, and it's the little ways again that depression affects you.
Yeah.
And again, if you're functioning in it,
you
really don't see it as a problem. But if you start to, once you start to like open your mind to, okay, maybe depression is playing a role in my life, then you can start to look at how it is affecting you.
Yeah.
Like, you know, Monday through Friday, I'm a beast. I work, I take care of the family, but yeah, I'm sleeping like 12 to 14 hours a day on Saturday and Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'm isolating, or, you know, I don't go out with my friends. And, I've never, you know, I am a little bit negative. Then you can start seeing how depression is playing a role in your life.
Yeah.
But again, that takes some, that is easier said than done, because not only does it take a degree of self-awareness, but honesty about what's going on in your life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, and honesty is so key. And when we're not honest with ourselves, we prevent ourselves from getting the help that we need.
Exactly.
When we're not facing ourselves and not telling the truth to ourselves. And so it is so important to really just be honest and want the best life for ourselves. It's meant to be lived and lived well. It is going to have its problems, its ups and downs. We're going to have loss, like you said. Loss is so many different things. It's funny because I was talking to someone earlier today, and we were talking about names. And I was sharing with them how I had detached from a name because of a loss that I had. I loved the name, and I detached myself because I lost something. You know, I had to quit. And so during that time, I'm pretty sure, you know, I had situational depression. And so, but it kept me from, you know, loving what I loved. And so I think this is a great topic, and I hope that it will help someone or help someone help someone. You know, and I am so thankful that you wanted to share this with the listeners. I think it's so important that we share your work that you do with women and children, in your personal life and your passion, the work that you'll do when you get your doctorates and as you move on, I think will be so valuable. So I want to thank you for this evening for coming with us. And I do want to ask you a question. Sure. You know, last year I started this Stop Tolerating What You Can Change. And if you had to add to this conversation about stop tolerating something you can change, what would that be as it relates to situational and functional depression?
if you are unhappy, then change the narrative. And that's what I did for me.
Yeah.
Right? So like I said, I found myself just when I realized I couldn't remember the last time that I was happy, I was like, you have to change this.
Yeah.
Because I felt that I deserved better.
Absolutely.
And so I was like, I'm not going to tolerate being perpetually unhappy for the rest of my life. And am I happy every day? Heck no. but it really has been a 360 once I made that decision that I am going to be happy.
Absolutely.
And there's degrees of it, and I'm going to explore all degrees of happiness that I can.
Wow.
So that is what there's so many things that we just do not have to tolerate in our lives, and we just have to realize that.
Yeah.
Because we've talked about this before. I wholly believe, outside of God, which is, in the end, it's all about God, but He gives us responsibility of ourselves. Right?
Absolutely.
We are responsible for ourselves.
That's right.
And as adults, we are responsible for how we want our lives to be.
Right.
And I'm not just talking externally, but internally.
Internally.
When maybe you can't control the external.
You
can control the internal if you can't control the external.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, this has been a wonderful conversation. I've learned a great deal. Again, I want to thank you so much for having this candid conversation on situational and functional depression and offering your personal experiences and your professionalism to this conversation. And I want to thank my listeners for listening in. And again, we hope that you can take something away from this. I am Coaching with Charlie. Thank you for joining us. Let's say goodbye, Danyell. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Thank you.